Hey, everybody. Welcome back. I may have misled you all on our Wednesday show when I said we'd have another one before Thanksgiving. We didn't. So, belatedly, happy Thanksgiving, everybody. I hope you guys had a lovely Thursday. On our end, we have multiple Thanksgivings. Actually, there's one more tonight, which brings us to a grand total of 3 here in the Vespers household. We've got my family, which the sheer quantity of cousins that I have that live in Southern California is truly extraordinary. I think it's like a 50 or 60 person Thanksgiving. It's not here. Good God, it's not here. We live in a 2-bedroom apartment. Can you even imagine? My God, that would be a bad idea. It's at one of my cousins' houses in Toluca Lake. And then from there, so that one we get to at like 3:30 or 4. We're there for about 2.5 hours. Then we drive from there to Calabasas to Thanksgiving number 2. That's at my mother-in-law's house. That one's only like a dozen people, so that one's a little bit more relaxed. The kids, we got home at like 10 o'clock because traffic at 9:15 in LA is truly awful on Thanksgiving night. And then we got another one today with my father-in-law. And then after that, I think we're finally done. So I hope you guys all had an equally hectic and an equally family-filled Thanksgiving. I was not awake with IBS in the middle of the night. So overall, it was a massive win. I'm Dan Vespers. This is Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. It's our Week 6 in review show where we're going to get you guys all the ads, all the drops, all the holds, all the injury replacements, and the injury replacement list ballooned over like the last 2.5 days. So heaven help us, we'll find our way through that one somehow. And it's just all the big stories that kind of get us reset for the weekend coming up. My hope, and I can talk a little bit more about this at the end of the program, is to do a show tomorrow on Saturday that recaps the Friday games just to kind of get everybody back in the groove. I think we need a few days of shows because I don't know if there's going to be time to do 2 shows today. And even if there is, what would it be? Sell High, I guess, would be the other one. Looking for one of those to do, or I don't know, it might be something else. And then Sunday, we'll have our Week 7 preview show, most likely dropping as well. Please do follow on Twitter at Dan Vespers, DanBesbris. It would appear, and I have to admit, I'm unbelievably flattered by this turn of events, that my Blue Sky handle was featured in one of the 2 NBA Mega Starter Packs. So that's really cool. That handle is Old Man Squad, and we are Old Man Squad Fantasy over on Instagram. I also may have a cousin of mine jumping on board here as an Old Man Squad member to help with production of our shows, or our shorts, I guess I should say. So maybe those will get a little bit cooler as opposed to me just screaming in your face. This is what's up. Week 6 in review, as I've said before, nothing brings me more joy than an old player getting back on rosters when they probably should have been there all along. You will find out who that is momentarily. Let's start with the injury replacement board because it's extraordinarily long. This is actually just 1 out of 2 pages. By the way, please like, rate, and subscribe while you have a moment there. Subscribing, obviously, the biggest part of the puzzle. We got to get you guys all in the funnel. I'm learning about the funnel. Expanding my, my brain grapes. And a lot of the players on this list have some context that we probably need to discuss as well. So let's just start at the top. It's generally by grouping, at least, in kind of an order of how I like them. But let's be honest, like the top 6 or 7 are kind of the only ones I like. And then there's a lot that I'm very much on the fence about. Robert Williams is my favorite. I know he's doubtful with the concussion symptoms, but the assumption there is that he's going to be back long before Donovan Clingan is, and even as just a backup to DeAndre Ayton, Robert Williams could put up some really good numbers. So he's a guy that I'm actually holding on to even while he's out right now. Bennedict Mathurin has been steamrolling with Aaron Nesmith out. We're many weeks now into that one. Malik Monk looks like a really good fill-in stream with DeMar DeRozan's back issues acting back up again. And honestly, those 3 are probably my favorites. Now you get into sort of like tier 2. Goga Bitadze still on the list. I thought he'd be done by now, but apparently the Magic have other thoughts, which is to play Wendell Carter Jr. at power forward, which likely is going to suck for him. Bitadze at center with Paolo out. which we're still a couple weeks out on that one. So Goga stays on the list. Moussa, Diabate in Charlotte. That game is actually happening right now. It's an early Friday game. They're down a point or two at halftime, I think. Diabate missed a couple free throws, but otherwise did the things he was supposed to in that first half. So everything kind of checking out so far on that stream, which again is a very limited one. Rebounds and sometimes defensive stats. Jared McCain, although it sounds like Paul George might be back for the Sixers game tomorrow. That's Saturday. Embiid is still out, but Nick Nurse did mention that the swelling's gone down. They think they're getting it under control. They may just have to hold his minutes in check. And I know that this is like the scariest thing that a man can say, and I know I've said it before, and you guys are going to keep killing me for it, and I'm okay with that. I think you can get Joel Embiid for like a top 50, top 60 guy right now. And if they do get that swelling under control, it could be the greatest buy low in the history of buy lows. With, of course, the exception of, like, if you're in a head-to-head league, there's a lot of risk involved in that. With Roto Games Cap, it's pretty different because you could, like, go get him for frickin' Dennis Schroeder these days, and I think it would actually happen. Or, like, DeMar probably would have gotten it done. People really want to be off of Joel Embiid, and I don't blame them. In the leagues where I have him, I'm thinking, what could I get back for him? Numerically, if you're selling Embiid, I wouldn't do it for anything worse than a top 30 guy. And if I'm buying, I'm not spending more than like a top 50 range guy, but that's my window on him right now. And all this comes back to Jared McCain, probably losing a little bit of value as Paul George comes back. Before we get to the next name on the list, I want to remind you guys that this show is brought to you by Bet Online. And this Thanksgiving holiday weekend, why not head to the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting? From the earliest odds to in-game live bets, Bet Online provides you with constant real-time odds and action and the ability to watch the games as they happen. They've got the largest selection of odds on everything from football to NBA and college basketball, hockey, UFC, and boxing. So head to the website today to see why Bet Online is America's most trusted site for online wagering. Bet Online, the game starts here. Klay Thompson is a guy I would use if he came back before Luka. That's why he's on this list. Malik Beasley is someone that I'm enjoying using while Cade Cunningham is out, but he's been upgraded to questionable. Tobias Harris is also questionable. If that team gets back to full strength, you can slip Malik Beasley off of this list, but in case either of those guys is ruled out, he probably still gets to do just enough to continue pushing along. Peyton Watson is kind of running out of gas a little bit, but I'm guessing he's going to hit a slight uptick. I do think that some of the empty-ish gas tank on Watson has to do with Jamal Murray starting to get his legs a little. He's not all the way there, but he's starting to look a little bit more like himself, and that's scary if you're playing against the Nuggets. So Watson is kind of a low-end stream right now. Malcolm Brogdon, I think, is going to be streamable while Kyle Kuzma is out because there's just going to be too much to do for the guys on this team that are not that good at doing things yet. Bobby Portis, if Giannis has to miss any more time. Denny Avdia with most of the Portland front court out. I know Ayton is back, but Time Lord is out. Donovan Clingan's out. Jeremy Grant is out. That's more than enough for Denny to get things to do. Grady Dick is out right now. If he happens to come back before Emmanuel Quickley and Bruce Brown, he would be kind of a low-end stream. Same with Julian Champagny. He's a low-end stream with Jeremy Sohan out. Gershon Yabusele. Oops, there's a misspelling in there, guys. Let's fix that. I got a thing for this. There we go. Ta-da! Oh, and I got to fix it on my backup copy, too, because this is all going to get copied over to social media. Can't have a misspelling one place and not in the other. Much better. Yabusele looks pretty good in his last ball game, filling in for Embiid. I have every reason to think he would again, although you can check opponent and maybe make a call at that point. Ayo Dosunmu's kind of fluctuating, flexing back and forth between pretty good with Patrick Williams out and pretty bad. So again, a lot of these guys in this range are sort of like the 50-50 injury replacements. Keyshawn George, he looked good the last time Kuzma missed time, but he started the second half of the Wizards' last ball game and did nothing. So is that more of a 50-50 play? Perhaps. Derek Jones Jr. has been slightly better, actually, than a 50-50 play with Norman Powell out, but Powell's been upgraded to questionable as of their last two ball games. He missed the last one, so he's probably getting very close now. Kelly Oubre Jr., I would only play him if both Embiid and Paul George are out, as opposed to someone like a McCain, who I'd probably play if either of them is out. So Oubre is probably in jeopardy of moving off of this list. Najee Marshall in Dallas doesn't do a whole lot besides score and rebound a little. But with, again, Luka and Clay missing time, that's been more than enough shots for him. Same story for Spencer Dinwiddie. I need both of those guys out if I'm going to take a plunge on these two dudes. And now we get into these teams where, like, a lot of guys are out. The Nets might be down half their damn roster. So keep an eye on injury news throughout the day. Cam Johnson is questionable. Dorian Finney-Smith is questionable. I think Jalen Wilson is questionable, if I'm not mistaken. We know Claxton is out. And Cam Thomas is out. Did I remember him? I'm sure I'm forgetting somebody. But because of all of that, Zaire Williams, Jalen Wilson, if he happens to play, Ben Simmons, and Dorian Finney-Smith, if he happens to play, all four of those guys might actually move into streamable territory. And if I'm picking between them, let's say all four of the guys that I just talked about are healthy. That, again, is Zaire Williams, Jalen Wilson, Ben Simmons, and Dorian Finney-Smith. If all four of those guys are healthy, I would probably go Jalen Wilson as the most interesting of them. Ben Simmons is capped out at about 27 minutes, but he is going to do a little more with Cam Thomas on the shelf. So then I'd probably, I don't know. Those other three guys, it's kind of a toss-up. For Portland, we already talked about how they're missing a bunch of guys. Oh, Scoot is back. I don't know. That's a copy and paste issue from yours truly. Got to get him off that board there. Toumani Camara, I think, is probably good enough. With, again, it's the same thing. The Portland front court is decimated, so he'll just have enough minutes to be at least a steals specialist. And then you get to the Hornets, where LaMelo Ball is out, Miles Bridges is out, Grant Williams is out for the year, Mark Williams, Nick Richards. I'm having some trouble mushing my words together. So we're seeing Vasilije Micic, pretty good ball game, at least at halftime to start. Tijan Salon is, I think, a little bit of a scarier play because he's going to be you figure like the lightning in a bottle type of stream. I don't think he's a direction I would go unless I absolutely had to. I think with Micic, at least you get the assists, and that sort of raises the floor a little bit among these other potential Hornets streams. And then if Steph happens to miss another ball game, I don't think that's going to be the case, but I threw these names right at the very end just in case. Buddy Hield and Brandon Podziemski are the two guys you could stream in Golden State if Steph Curry has to miss any more time. Okay, that's the 40-player injury board. Let's take a quick break before we get to the ads, and YouTubers, you can see the list while we take that break. Okay, as you guys know now, with the ads board, I'm including names from previous weeks. They're sort of like a, take credit kind of thing, but also just if anything's going wrong. We'll have a secondary board coming right after this one if any ads from last week need to be readjusted in some way. So reminding you guys, 3 weeks ago or whatever it was, we had Chris Dunn on the ads board. And then the following week, we were like, nope, you can go ahead and drop him. This week, for instance, and actually I'll just flip ahead so you guys can see, Jaden McDaniels was on the ads board. Last week, I'm moving him to a hold. He's no longer a strong ad, but I liked how many shots he took in their last ball game, and it does feel like his role is just bigger. So hold through a shooting downtick because the role is there right now. So let's pivot back now to the ads, because now we already talked about who got shifted over. New ads. One of them is a guy that I've had in the holds board the entire year, but I moved him up into ads just to make sure that you guys saw it. This is more of I wanted to emphasize, and that's Mike Conley, who anybody that's listened to this podcast through the preseason and then through the first 5.5 weeks of this regular season, you guys know that all along I've said, you got to hold Conley, because watching his numbers, watching his role, watching the way the team looked when he's there versus not there, it was just very clear that, number one, they need him. And number two, he pretty much couldn't play any worse than he was playing. And yet somehow, after like 1.5 ever so slightly better ball games, they weren't great, he's up to 116. He's a 10th rounder right now, which I get it. That's fringy. That's filler level based on the nomenclature we've used in the past. But he's 10th round while shooting 32% from the field and playing 25.5 minutes per ball game. I think it's really important for everybody to look at what Conley's done lately, minus the injury to his toe. 37, 30, and 32 minutes in his last 3 ball games. He has 9 steals over that stretch. Only 14 assists, although admittedly the Wolves haven't exactly been shooting the lights out. He still can't make a bucket. I can't fully put my finger on what the hell's going on there. But if he ever bothers to hit a shot, then his value is going, I don't want to say skyrocket, because he's still Mike Conley and he's still sort of a traditional old man punching his way through. But he got dropped in a lot of spots. His rostership went down to like high 30s, low 40s percentage-wise. And, I had him in a few places, and so I was able to add him in 1 or 2 more. I don't have a lot of Mike Conleys, but I have a few. And you're looking at a guy that at some point the shot's going to drop, and the other stuff is sort of coming together. And then there was that Anthony Edwards postgame rant about how nobody's on the same page and how he and Mike were talking about blah, blah, blah. You know who Mike is, right? Mike Conley and Anthony Edwards are effectively the leaders on this team. And that's going to create a situation where Conley's going to just have to play more. The Wolves look disjointed defensively, offensively, you name it. They look disjointed. They're going to need that boat captain. So he's a hold. Mike Conley's a hold, but I put him on the ads board just to make sure you guys didn't skip past this one. A more fresh name on the ads board is Dalton Knecht, who, again, this is why you need to be following on Twitter and listening to podcasts all throughout the week. If you're just listening to the weekly ones, like this one doesn't even make sense to you guys, because Knecht was an injury replacement for a while, and then he got bumped back to the bench when Rui Hachimura came back and the Lakers looked terrible. And then he got pushed back into the starting lineup, and he looked a whole hell of a lot better. And the Lakers as a team looked better just with floor spacing, and guys had better looks just by having Knecht out there. But like individually, if you didn't get the story the whole way through, it probably looks like I'm just 2 weeks late on a Dalton Knecht ad. But it was injury replacement, not rostered, back to being added because he's just a starter now. And this could hold for a while. I don't think Jared Vanderbilt is going to take that job. I think they like leaning into offense in the starting 5, and I think it makes sense. So make sure to pick up Dalton Knecht. I don't know exactly how this is all going to turn out as the season progresses and so on and so forth. But it looks pretty good now, and dude's going to get open looks playing alongside LeBron and AD and Austin Reeves. And he'll have some time around D'Lo, who also looked much better in that last ball game. And again, some of that's because he made some shots, which is going to change the way a guy functions on a basketball court. But just, rotations wise, things looked better, and it's good for Dalton. Reminder ads, we can move through these a little bit quicker than Conley and Knecht. Bogdan Bogdanovic, make sure he's added. Should have been a while ago, probably should have never been dropped. But if he was, this is your second reminder there. DeAndre Hunter is a guy that I think a little bit higher on than most, but not by a lot. I just think he has a nice potential to sit near the top 100. Most of his numbers right now are very repeatable. 13 shots a game, a steal, 17.5 points, good free throw percent, field goal at about 45.5, which might even tick up just the littlest bit, depending on the sort of ebbs and flows of the long NBA season. So maybe he pushes up another 6 to 10 slots or something like that. But that's still worthwhile. And I know we get caught up, I think, I know I do, in trying to find the next, top 60 guy on the waiver wire. But that crap doesn't happen. That happens once a month at most. Sometimes you get 2 the first week, and then you might get another one when teams realize they need to rapidly adjust what they're doing. But guys that pop up, because DeAndre Hunter was heavily not drafted this year, guys that pop up and then actually stick top 75, extraordinarily rare. And so that's why if you find someone that pops up and sticks top 100, that's still good. Jonathan Isaac actually gets a little bit of an upgrade on this one. He's technically a reminder because he's been an ad on our show for the last week and a half. But now he's playing in back-to-backs, and that makes him an ad in, I think, all formats, where I only had him in games cap leagues last week. Now I'm going ahead and saying, just go ahead and add him. Andrew Wiggins is on a little bit of a heater, and of course, with Steph out, if that lasts, he'll have a little bit more to do. Go ahead and make sure he's added. The Time Lord, we talked about him earlier. We don't need to cover that again. And then the guys that are now on here for a fourth consecutive time, Tari Eason, so he'll move on to the rest of season board. Maybe I need to add that. I'm going to make a note to myself to add the rest of seasons board. Da-da-da-da-da. Listen to Dan make a note to himself. It's really good podcasting. Rest of season winners. So we got to put the guys that we picked up and have lasted for 4 weeks. We've talked about this before. Who the hell were they on the last program? Christian Braun was in there. Oh, crap. Who were the other ones? Anyway, I'll make a note to myself. We don't need to fill that all out. So these guys are all going to end up on that board, presumably by next week, unless something terrible happens. Tari Eason, Shaedon Sharpe if you're punting field goal, and then PJ Washington. I think all three of those guys can officially be retired to the rest of season winners board, and we proceed. We already talked about the updates, so let's jump straight through to the clear holds after one more commercial break. Clear holds, and most of these names are retreads. Oops! Oh, you guys caught me. It's hard. I put so many names on this thing that I'm going to end up screwing something up. I left Mike Conley in there, which I guess kind of makes sense because I told you it was a hold anyway. Colin Sexton has moved up from soft hold to clear hold. Some of that is just because Utah is dealing with some guys that are banged up right now, so the opportunity is a little bit better for Sexton than it was a week ago. But he's playing a little bit better, and he's been driving me crazy so far this year, but he's up to number 143 now, and I think, what's he over the last 2 weeks? 120? That's still not very good. What about the last 1 week? 49. Okay. I mean, he's shooting 57%, but whatever. We'll take the small win. So he's a clear hold right now. Jaden Ivey, punt builds guy, Drew Holiday, Jonas Valanciunas, those guys were on this board last time, so I don't think we need to do a whole lot on them. Drew Holiday, it's all about waiting on the defensive stats. Valanciunas now, especially with Kuzma out, that's an easier call. Jaden Ivey is a punt builds guy. With Cade out for a couple of ball games, he actually moved up to an all categories guy, or an all formats guy. And yeah, the time to worry board shortened up a little bit, so that was kind of nice. Most of these guys are retreads, though. Herb Jones, he's a soft hold. I don't have a soft holds category, so he ends up in this time to worry. It's not really a time to worry on Herb Jones. He's hurt, and he has been for a month. So that one makes no sense. But with the way the Pelicans season is looking, to me, it almost becomes a more clear hold on Herb if you've made it this far. Terry Rozier is a hold for me. He's back from a foot injury, and I think he's going to be a little bit better, but I guess we'll see about that. Nurk just keeps flip-flopping between very good games and absolutely awful ones. I have no idea where that dude is going to land at the end of all of this, but it sure feels like filler level. Jabari Smith Jr. has been hotter lately, although his last ball game wasn't quite as good. But regardless, he's been very playable over the last week or so, thanks to better percentages and collecting a few blocks. So I don't know if we need to worry as much. I actually think that Jabari Smith Jr., like Nurkic, probably ends up in that filler zone. But while they're hot, you play them. But overall, a little bit worried. Wendell Carter Jr. at power forward is somewhat worrisome to me, but if you waited through his injury, then you might as well just give it a little bit more time. Perhaps my hope, I guess, is that there's enough offense available in Orlando now with Paolo out for a few more weeks that this would be a time for Wendell to actually be fantasy useful, but we'll see. D'Angelo Russell, I think he actually looked better in his last ball game. I think as the shot starts to come around, you'll see a little bit more of that cut it loose D-Lo. Yes, there's reason to worry because guys are just ahead of him now that weren't last year, but I'm not panicking quite yet. And then Jalen Duren, he might be the guy on this list that I'm the closest to panicking on. Not because I have him in a bunch of places. I actually have him in one, and it was a keeper league where I kept him for like a 13th round price. So that one, don't mind either way. He was drafted in the 5th round in most fantasy drafts, which, as you recall, we did say we thought was too early during our preseason shows. But he also then becomes one of the hardest guys to drop because of the draft capital that was spent on him. Unless he figures out how to play strong positional defense, he may be doomed to 25, 26 minutes a game. I love his rebounding so damn much. I really do. But, Pistons media is killing him because he's the obvious weak link defensively for a team that actually is guarding people pretty well. And not that Isaiah Stewart is some sort of world beater on that end, but he's been very good positionally on defense in a way that Duren has not. So he's got to figure this out, or his minutes are not going to go up in the way that there was hope they might. The cut list. Jonathan Kuminga's a cut. Has been. I might need to put asterisks on these guys' names too. This is the 3rd week in a row that I've put Jonathan Kuminga on the cut list. 2nd week in a row, I've put Bobby Portis on the cut list. Because he's just not going to get it done when Giannis and Brook Lopez are healthy. 3 new names on the cut board. They moved down from the time to worry guys. Dante DiVincenzo, who, if he can't get it going when Conley's out, I don't see how there's any hope that he can get it going when Conley's in and playing big minutes. Dante is number 205. Yes, I know the field goal percent is at 35%, but no, I don't really care, because even if that gets up into the low 40s where he likely belongs, his ability to post value relies on touching the basketball, and he's just not that much. He's not showing himself to be a particularly good backup point guard. Rob Dillingham looks like the better option there for the Wolves right now. And yeah, it could turn around for Dante. He could sort of figure out the right role on this team, and maybe they start to utilize him differently, and then I'll happily reassess. But right now, he's doing way more harm than good. Bub Carrington is the next name on the cut board with Brogdon and Bilal Coulibaly safely. Oh, I should have put Bilal on one of these things. Give me just a second here, guys. Let's go back and we'll put him on the worry board. Bilal Coulibaly. He's time to worry. I don't know that I necessarily need to turn the page back for you guys to know that I'm worried about him. But his minutes are so high. And again, now Kuzma's out. So you got to hold on that one. But with Bub getting pushed out, there's the minutes are down. That's the part that's disconcerting there. Zachary Reese-Shea, he sort of is getting downgraded from, for a while, he was an active stash guy when Bogdan and Hunter were both out. They're in. And yeah, Reese-Shea is getting starts, but, what did he play? 17, 18 minutes in the last ball game? That's not even remotely close to enough. The watch list has grown a lot this week, and some of it's because of how many injuries there have been where guys that I'm not certain are injury replacement material are on this board, so we can move through this a little bit of a lightning round style, but we'll cover them a little. Duncan Robinson, some of that's been kind of a running hot situation for him. Some of it was that he got a little bit more to do when Terry Rozier was out. Overall, he's still not a great fantasy asset. But 3 of his last 5 games have been pretty good. And his last ball game was his best of the year with 6 3-pointers. Actually tied his best of the year. So yeah, keep an eye on it, but I don't think it's going to amount to anything. Ty Jerome is the hottest man in the NBA. So, I mean, you have to at least give him a look, even if he's only playing 22, 23 minutes a ball game. Dude is hitting 3-pointers like they're about to, eliminate the 3-pointer from the NBA, and he wants to make sure he can collect as many as possible. He also has 7 steals over his last 2 ball games. I mean, he probably ends up falling in the stream while hot department. He's certainly an injury play if Darius Garland or Donovan Mitchell has to miss a game. And you know me, I don't tend to stream guys in Roto unless I know they're going to have a bunch of opportunity. But, schedule-wise, he probably falls into that. Quentin Grimes in Dallas, he's looked okay here with a bunch of guys out. He's probably a schedule-level play, but could get himself elevated to the injury board. Russell Westbrook has been on a kind of a decent little, I don't know, call it a tear lately because it got going when Jokic was out, but he's managed to kind of semi keep it going even since Jokic came back. But it sure feels like the percentages are about to tank because his free throws haven't been that bad the last 2 ball games after they were awful before that. He's shooting the ball well. 2 of his last 3, he's shot the ball well. Playing the Lakers defense was very helpful. He was the only Nugget really to have a good ball game against the Knicks, so that was something. Steals have been there. Oh man, though, it is painful when it goes bad. So watch list when you get stuck in between. Jay Crowder's on the watch list just in case he takes that job and plays 33 minutes, but I don't think it's going to be the case in Sacramento because they've still got. DeMar was out, so that's going to play a role. Does he get pushed to the bench, and is he sort of an afterthought when DeMar comes back? And even with DeMar out, he's got to deal with Kevin Huerter floating around also. Tyrese Martin, who had a huge ball game. I cannot imagine that happens again. Marcus Smart had a big ball game, but limited minutes again. So watch list. Ochai Agbaji might push himself onto the injury replacement board. Might. This would be for Grady Dick. But to me, reading too much into that last ball game where he shot, 9 out of 10? That's not going to happen again. Quentin Jackson has been okay as I think probably a schedule level streamer for Indiana. Yves Missi in New Orleans starting to play a little bit better, but the consistency isn't there. Same with Jeremiah Robinson Earl, who also had a better ball game, but can't rely on these guys. I've got one eye on Alex Caruso, who looked like he was finally starting to hit some shots and then got knocked out by a hip thing. And he's out. You don't have to do anything with him. But if he surfaces and starts playing 25, 26 minutes, then I would definitely make him an ad. But for now, don't do anything. And then I had these guys on the cut board for a couple of weeks, but just throw them on the watch list now. Onyeka Okongwu and Clint Capella, who keep kind of trading off who's having the slightly better ball game. Capella's ranked 165. Okongwu is ranked 138. They're both filler level or worse right now. If anything happens to either of them, then the other one actually becomes a startable fantasy play. And finally, I added an active stash board to the end of this thing, mostly just so you guys have it. Oh, is there something else I put at the end? Oh, yeah, I got the Stream While Hots, but you don't care about those. It's the same names every week. Active stashes right now. Alex Sarr and Stephon Castle are the young guys that belong on this board because Sarr in particular has been good enough lately to start anyway in all formats. Castle has been good enough to start in head-to-head leagues where you're less worried about the inefficiencies. And Robert Williams is not the rookie type of active stash, but we want somebody getting moved, whether it's Ayton or maybe Robert Williams himself, that it's not going to be Donovan Clingan, obviously, but that would clear out a path for Robert Williams to play 20 minutes consistently, and that's really more than all he needs. And anything beyond that, 24 minutes and he's a top 50 guy, that's just all gravy. The other guys that could go on this board to me are really not dudes you can start right now. So it's the traditional stash types are backups to Brooklyn, although with half the team hurt, maybe they are an active stash right now. Other young guys in Washington, like a Bub or a Keyshawn, a lot of things still need to happen for those to be usable now. Whereas now I get it, Robert Williams is dealing with the concussion, but these 3 guys, when healthy right now, are playable in some kind of format, many or a few. Castle reminds me a lot of Jaden Ivey in fantasy build, where yeah, you could play him, but he could also do so much damage that he hurts more than he helps. There was a point that came up, and I want to address it because it's a good point, and I think we're losing the nuance. I haven't had a chance to reply to the YouTube comment from a longtime listener who made a good point of, Dan, you talk about the damage that guys do to percentages too much. So I believe that, and maybe this gets lost in the fact that I tend to avoid those guys because I think there's a really nice benefit head-to-head or Roto, definitely Roto, but also head-to-head in being competent at the percentages at large. And the nuance that I think we're losing here, and it's a discussion that like we could all argue about for hours and hours and hours, is should we care about the percentages at all? Because there's so much variance week to week, should we care about the percentages at all? And my take is yes, because while there is a lot of variance on individual players week to week, the aggregate of what those guys do does bring you to their final number. And so if you look at your head-to-head league and you look at the standings, it does tend to reflect somewhat accurately what your team's overall percentage is. So like I'm in a handful, very small, not even a full handful of traditional 9-cat head-to-head leagues because I don't like them all that much, but I want to do just enough so that we can talk about them competently on these podcasts. In the one that I'm looking at right now, which is with our good buddy, friend of the program, Vince Miracle, my team has the third best overall, this is in aggregate, field goal percent, and the third worst free throw percent so far in a 12-team league. And to this point, my team is 3-2 in field goal percent and 0-5 in free throw percent. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. Very imperfect in that way, because if it was exactly right, I probably would be 1-4 in free throw percent and 4-1 in field goal percent. You could argue that my team has been a little bit unlucky so far. Maybe I've played a team that had a better than average week in each of those categories one time, or maybe every week my team had, 3 weeks where they were very, very good in field goal and 2 where they were very, very bad. And so that's where it averaged out. But it is worth pointing out that my team being third from the top in field goal and third from the bottom in free throw didn't land with me being like 1-4 in field goal percent and 3-2 in free throw percent. It's relatively close to what you'd expect my team would be. And you can look at all of the teams in your leagues, and obviously the ones right in the middle are going to be kind of hard to sort out. But like, if you look at the team that's the best in free throw percent, that team is called Trey the Truth. How's that team doing in free throw? They're 4-1. Should they be 5-0? I don't know, maybe. But 4-1 is pretty freaking close. What about the team that's the best in field goal percent? They're up there with me. Who is this team? They're 4-1 in field goal percent. So, yes, there's a ton of week-to-week variance on percentages. But in aggregate, it tends to land relatively close to where you think you'd be. So when I talk about caring about percentages, maybe I overemphasize it a little bit because of my obsessions with Roto, where that stuff, you will just be what your percentage is at the end of the year. If I'm third from the bottom in free throw percent, I will get 3 Roto points. If I'm third from the top in field goal percent, I would have 10 Roto points. And when head-to-head, it's not going to be locked in so perfectly, so one-to-one matched up. But it's not like typically you're going to be second from the best in something and go like, I don't know how many weeks your regular season is. Your regular season is 18, 19 weeks. You're probably not going to be third from the top in field goal and go like 5-13 in field goal percent. If you're in the top 2 or 3 in aggregate, in a percentage, your head-to-head win-loss record is going to reflect that in some degree within a certain confidence interval. And again, with Roto, there's no confidence interval. It just is what it is. In head-to-head, you have the bell curve coming away from it. You'll probably be, 12-6 or something like that. But what that tells us is it does matter. You can't just wing it and assume that everything's going to work out. Now, the sort of contrarian point to argue against myself is, come playoff time, you want to be able to rely on categories that are a little bit more predictable. So that part I understand. Head-to-head time, head-to-head playoff time, you don't want to be like, oh, well, I need to win both percentages to win my playoff week because weird things happen. Although at the same time, like, maybe you've got a better shot to actually have those stick if you run into a team where you have way fewer games than the other one. So, like, there's other ways to look at this. You're going to stream. Your opponent's probably going to stream in your head-to-head playoffs. If you have 6 fewer games and just get unlucky, wouldn't it be nice to be pretty good at the percentages? That might be your only path through. But excluding that, I get it. Because of the week-to-week variance, it's hard to go into a head-to-head playoff battle thinking, I got to win field goal percent to do this, and your team could just have a bad field goal percent week in a way that typically, like if you're second from the best in rebounding, you're probably not going to have a week where your team just forgets how to rebound. It's going to be a much easier number to predict in your head-to-head playoffs. But all that rolls together to say, yes, there is a lot of variance, but yes, it also does stay somewhat close to your expected outcome. It's not going to be like, oh, well, my team's good at this, so I still have no idea what's going to happen. You're still going to win it more often than you're going to lose it. It's just going to be less predictable than if your team was very, very good in assists or something like that. And so you want that certainty for your head-to-head playoffs. So I get it. Believe me, I understand. But the reason I talk about percentages and the reason I think we should all care about them is that might be the thing that gets you that first-round bye in your playoffs. Being half decent in free throw percent might be the thing that gets you into the playoffs. And so then you look at the rank board and you look at someone like a Jaden Ivey who's ranked 198th, and that tells you that while you might love his 18 points and 4.5 boards and 4 assists and almost 2 3-pointers, the damage he's doing in field goal, free throw, and turnovers long-term is larger than the good he's doing with the 18 points and the slightly better than average assists or whatever it is that you think you're getting that's so awesome at him. And again, I'm excluding the games when Cade Cunningham is out because I like Ivy in those games. Understanding the 9-cat rank board is more nuanced than just lining them up and saying, oh, well, Jaden Ivey is the 198th best player in the NBA. But if someone's ranked around 200, odds are you'd be better off picking someone else for your 9-cat team. You can still win with him, but it's definitely not the easiest way. And you might say, oh, Dan, well, the rank board is flawed because Larry Nance is at 154. Yeah, but we know that. We don't want to just pick the albatross and say this is why it's broken. It's all about my job, I think at least, is to try to help everybody understand what does the rank board even mean? Because lining it up 1 through 200 is just flat out idiotic. It makes no sense. It's a useless way of trying to understand the rank board. But if you understand how the math gets these players to where they are, then you can understand how that rank board can be useful for you. And I think that's kind of the cool point that's deeply ingrained in this. So I don't want the pendulum to swing too far in the direction of we can't care at all about percentages because they fluctuate. We have to find that nice creamy midpoint, I believe. And that's why I still stress them, in addition to the fact that obviously, you know, they're like free points if you're playing in a Roto league. The Stream While Hot board is unchanged week over week. Herter, Monk, Clarkson, Dort, Heald, Levert, Beasley. Play them when things are right. Don't when you don't, whatever. Like if some guys pop onto the injury replacement board, great. Heald and Monk are on that, and Beasley have been on that board lately, and blah, blah, blah. I thought it was more important to spend those 10 minutes on understanding my personal feel on why I think percentages still matter, and then understanding how they impact a player's rank. Because, like, I'm getting back into it again because this stuff is so interesting. We could talk about it forever. If you look at someone like let's find a bad percentage guy ranked in like the one. Where's Shaedon Sharpe right now? No, he's at 194 also. Not a good example. Alex Sarr, he's at 142, and his percentages have been horrible so far. 142 with bad percentages is pretty different, actually, than 190-something with bad percentages. We have to try to find the sort of subtle but not that subtle difference. I know these guys are all mushed together, so it's not like there's this colossal gap between these dudes, but it also makes what someone like Giannis does so unbelievably impressive that he can be that bad at a percentage category and still be ranked 51 overall. But again, like obviously Giannis isn't the 51st best player in the NBA or the 51st best player in fantasy. It's just the way that the math is impacting his stuff. But like you should probably be punting free throw with Giannis. Do you have to? No, but you should. Because I actually think, and this has been the premise for my show dating back to when I started the first one, simplify this game. Make fantasy basketball simpler for yourself. And a simple way to do that is to just don't do things the hard way. And trying to win a category when your lead horse is the worst player in the NBA at it is the hard way. Anyway, one of these days we'll just do a show where we rant like loony bins about all this kind of stuff because it's so much fun. The strategy element of this is infinitely entertaining. There's so many ways to win. And I hope I clarified where I stand on this and maybe answered that question in the process. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'm Dan Besbris, at Dan Besbris on Twitter, at Old Man Squad on Blue Sky. Hit that like button on the way out. Please subscribe to Old Man Squad while you're here. And drop a 5-star review if you're listening on Apple or Spotify. We'll be back with you again probably tomorrow, although if I'm feeling the spirit later today, maybe we'll get some sort of weird specialty show going. My guess is that we'll just add one show to the weekend instead of doing 2 today. But, subscribe and stay tuned, and you'll figure out when something happens. And until then, enjoy the basketball all day today. We got all day basketball today. Weird-ass early game is in the third quarter right now. Why? I don't know. Teams are finally starting to wake up a little bit. Took them a minute. Next game is in like a half hour. That's awesome. Okay, I'm done. Bye-bye, everybody.